I'm delighted to be joined by Paralympics Ireland legend James Scully. James, who's already laughing at the description. James has just announced his retirement from Paralympic swimming. James, how do you feel? This is a big part of your life that you've stopped doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it was a huge part of my life. It probably dominated the vast majority of my life, and then my whole life was centred around swimming to a large degree, particularly in college and school. And even when I started working originally, swimming was the main focus, and I suppose that's hard to move away from in a lot of respects. But don't get me wrong, I am enjoying a bit of the break and not having to get up in the mornings or train every evening. So, but look, life moves on, and I miss swimming, and I do, and particularly the people involved. I miss the teammates, I miss the competitions. Not so much the training, but I do miss the crack that went on.
The team, you were a very popular member of that team, and there's no question about that. We saw that during the swimming championships during the summer. Did you tell the group together, and what was that feeling like?
I think my idea or my strategy behind the whole thing was less so much to tell the group in a big formal setting, and I think a lot of people knew that it was going to be this kind of a process for, particularly after Rio, and I made my feelings known to my teammates, because we're a small group, and even in Rio there was only 4 of us, and there's a couple of other guys, but there's no more than 8 at any one time, so we're a close-knit group, and everyone had the knowledge that probably a lot of people, including myself, expected myself to quit after Rio, and that was a real fear, but it was the prospect of having the home championships that drew me back in. But I suppose, yeah, no, people did know, and I tried to play it down to a large degree, largely to stay unemotional about the whole thing, and that was my biggest fear, about kind of getting overly emotional at the end. But I suppose I maybe didn't display it on the outside, but inside it, I would have been quite emotional in my last race.
Your last race, as you said, was in Dublin at the swimming championships, the European Championships. You were the first Irish person in the pool in the first race, which was a pretty major undertaking. You bore that responsibility very lightly. Your last race for Ireland will have been in the same venue. How do you feel that kind of puts a full stop on your career? Do you think that was a nice way to end it?
Yeah, no, it was a beautiful way to finish it out. Like, it started in the Aquatic Centre in 2006 as a young lad who didn't really have any set goals. He just kind of started getting into the swim and see where it went, and then to finish your career in Dublin. It's like when even you go to the team sports, rugby and soccer and Gaelic football. Everyone likes to retire in their home grounds in front of their home crowd, and it was a nice touch. I had my whole family there, all my friends came down, and the local community and people in the NAC and the wider community of Dublin and Meath have been so supportive of me over the years, and it was great to kind of have that kind of. It wasn't so much an ultimate send off, but it was nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
There was such a warm welcome for you when you walked out onto the pool deck in that first race on the Monday of the championships, and it was just a massive reaction. Were you aware of that reaction, and did you feel like it meant more to you knowing that you probably had taken the decision that this was going to be your last time competing for Ireland at that stage?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you always want to finish on high, and probably my biggest concern going into the championships was maybe the fear of underperforming, because I even recognised, and everyone knew at the time, like, I was trying to juggle full-time career with swimming, and I wasn't nearly as fit as I would have been in the past in London or Rio or any of those world championships in between. So the big fear was that I'd show up and I'd be emotionally in the zone, but maybe not so fit. But look, I still managed to go under 3 minutes in the 200, and that was, I suppose, surprise to myself more so than anyone, and even Dave. But Dave always had the confidence, so he knew I'd do it. But it was a bit surprising. Like, I'd broken 3 minutes once in Ireland before, and even at the peak of my career, and that was the fastest time I swam in Dublin. But it was nice, and like, there would have been pressure, but I always take time even before races and well in advance of races to kind of prepare myself for that. So knowing that going out in front of the crowd, you're prepared, you're in the zone, you can acknowledge the crowd, you know it's there, you can hear it, but you're there to do your job, and that's what I was there to do.
You mentioned Dave, and Dave is Dave Malone, who has been your swimming coach for how long?
He's been my swimming coach for nearly the whole way through, from 2006 up to 2018, so there's only about 2 years in between where I went to Maynooth as part of my scholarship there, and would have trained under the Maynooth swim team. the Devils.
The Devils suitable for
yeah,
you?
yeah, I knew I am Devils. Yeah, so I suppose that I don't know whether my personality rubbed off on them or their team rubbed off on me. But look, me and Dave have built a relationship over years and years, and it seems nearly longer than it actually was. Like, it's only 12 years, but like we've been working together for so long, and it's been a great experience in terms of like being able to develop that longitude of relationship and the understanding. And I suppose when I was at the awards after post Rio and received the outstanding team contribution, and I made a little joke saying Dave imparted a lot of knowledge onto me, but I suppose I might have given a few tips and learning cues along the way to him. So that's the whole process of a coach-athlete relationship.
There's no question that you had a particularly close relationship with Dave. You've worked with a lot of good people over your career. Are there any people that you feel like maybe have pushed you a little bit more and helped you a little bit on your way to being the Paralympian that you were?
Yeah, no, and I think it comes from a lot of perspectives. Like, even like first and foremost, my parents, my brother and sister, my wider family, they were always 100% supportive of me. Regardless, like, I suppose they wouldn't have had the in-depth knowledge or the passion for swimming, knowing my family's ever been a swimmer before, and probably not for a while yet, but they've always been my number one, my rock. And then throughout my career, as I mentioned, Dave, Haley, Jim, all the other coaches along the way, the coaches in Minute, Martin and Raffo. So there's been a lot of people who've had their impact on me, my friends, and even the community in Ratoath. They've always been absolutely second to none. I did a talk there a couple of weeks ago in my old secondary school. They invited me back in to do a talk on kind of inclusion and diversity, and it was nice to be remembered. And there was a lot of teachers I remembered, and there was a lot of new teachers, and I suppose I've been out of the school since 2011, so even the first years when I was doing my leaving cert are all gone. But it was nice to get back, and I suppose that's one of my main things with sport, is to be able to return back to your community and represent the community first and foremost. So I think despite being out of swimming in a competitive sense, I still have a lot to feed back into the sport, I feel.
You've done so much in your career. Is there anything that particularly stands out to you as a moment that, and I'm sure there's loads of moments, and feel free to rattle off a few here, but like, what stands out to you particularly as you start to reflect on what you achieved?
I think ultimately it was the respect between athletes, and that's one thing you hear of a lot of diverging views on, particularly in Paralympic swimming. There's 14 different categories, and everyone has a different experience, and different races bring different competitors. But the one moment I'll always remember is the final for 200 freestyle in Rio, and there was that moment of ultimate respect. And the irony of it all was that I'd say no more than 2 people out of the age men had English as their first, or even like 10% of their language. So no more than 2 people spoke another person's language, but yet everyone knew they had a job to do, and everyone ultimately respected each other. And the whole thing was, before you going out, you shook every man's hand. Now, if they didn't have hands, you just shook a stump, or you gave them a pat on the back, and there's quite a few that's particularly in S5. But you looked the man in the eye and best of luck, and you went out there in front of 10,000+ people, and that was it's a heartwarming moment. I'll never forget moments like that. But again, like, you talk about World Championships and European Championships and not treating them differently, and you don't. You treat every competition the same, but the Paralympic Games has that special moment, and it's different, and you just can't prepare for it. And that was one thing Dave told me even in advance of London. He says, look, Scully, you've done all these competitions before, you've raced all these guys before, but you can't prepare for it. I can't tell you how to prepare for a Games, and if I was to talk to a junior athlete, I'd say exactly the same. You just embrace the moments and just live it. But look, throughout my career I've had lovely moments. I've had quite a few challenges in my career. It's not all rainbows and sparkles. It's a lot of rocky challenges, and you approach them as they go, and you tackle them head on, and they do make you stronger. Like, you come out a stronger person, as I like to say. It's a bit of character building, and I like to say I have a bit of character now after the swimming.
Well, there's absolutely no doubt in your character, but you, in your Paralympic career, you were part of what was undoubtedly one of the biggest moments for Paralympic sports ever to happen, which was the London Games. The London Games changed everything. Did you feel at the time, competing at those games, that this was a real moment in history for Paralympians?
Oh, absolutely. Like, the public support that we got going into London was never equalled, and even in Rio it wasn't equalled. It wasn't even close. Like, the whole Irish community, and as an Irish person, especially with all the whole Anglo-Irish relations at the moment, the British community got absolutely behind us. Like, and that was an eye-opening moment going into the final in London. Whenever there was no British athlete, the Irish athlete was number 1, and if you was a British athlete, you were number 2, and the crowd gave you an absolute huge welcome. Probably because it was so close as well. Like London lifted the Paralympic movement beyond anyone could imagine. Before London, Paralympic sport wasn't recognised. It wasn't understood. There was a whole misperception of what it was. There was confusion between Paralympics and Special Olympics. And London got people in front of the cameras. It got people exposed into the limelight. And people back home saw these people on TV for the first time in their lives, and they go, wow, this is different. It's amazing. People were inspired, and not overly inspired, I think, but people took it seriously, and people said, Jesus, these athletes, it's a parallel Olympics. They're equal to Olympians, and we should treat them that way. And not only in the sense that we should respect them more, also we should expect more of them. And I think that's where I think Paralympics has a job to go even further, more public expectation. And that, if the public expect more of you, that grows the sport. And whether it's through failure or success, I think there shouldn't be any difference between able-bodied sport and Paralympic sport. And London did a huge benefit to us in that regard. Now Rio was great as well. Rio did lift it slightly more, but London will have that special moment for me and for everyone involved.
And do you feel, having had those championships take place in Dublin in the National Aquatic Centre, do you feel that the Irish public have embraced Paralympians in the way that they should? And do you feel that you and your team were able to deal with the added expectation of having an event like this in your own home city, in your own home pool, with those added maybe with the added attention that has come about as a result of London and Rio?
Yeah, no, I think so, and I think every athlete, particularly in Dublin, performed to the best of their ability. Some people had absolutely stunning performances. In terms of the expectation is huge, and I think the Irish public have opened their eyes to Paralympic sport, but I think there's a long way to go, and I think we are behind some of our European counterparts. I think there's that misperception still remains, and we have a lot of work to do, and that's not only just from the media's job, it's for athletes' job. I think a lot of athletes, and I'm probably guilty of it myself, of not broadcasting this enough. Like, I didn't use Twitter throughout my career, but that's probably my personality. I was probably more humble in certain senses, not in other senses. But I think there is a way to go, but we are moving in the right direction.
Do you feel then that even though you've finished now in the pool, do you see a role for yourself as an ambassador for Paralympic sports, and is that something that you would maybe not be happy to do, but more so feel a responsibility to do for a sport for all sports now, not just swimming, that you obviously love? Yeah, no,
and I think regardless of whether you'd be happy or not to do it, there is that responsibility, and sports people, particularly those who've been around a while and have had that kind of, I suppose, leadership structure within their own sport, just to a large extent, do have a responsibility to grow their sport. And I see that in myself as well, and particularly I've gone, even after Rio, my first objective was to get a coaching qualification. So now I'm a level 1 qualified coach, so that's one way I can feed back in, and I've done a bit of coaching now. I'm looking to get back involved in it, but again, you do have a duty to promote your sport, to kind of become a critic in some senses as well, and not become someone who's just, this is great, this is brilliant, but someone who's knowledgeable about the sport and will raise the questions when they need to be raised. And I do have a responsibility. Now, I embrace that, and that's my personality, and I'm honoured to be in position, not only to have represented Ireland for 10 plus years, but to be put in that responsibility. Now, other people might not enjoy that, but regardless, you do have a responsibility to regrow your sport and feed back into it, because swimming's been great to me, and it's been great to all the other members of the Irish team. So, now, not that you have to, but there is a certain responsibility to feed back, yeah.
Do you feel, you mentioned there you're not on Twitter, I'm not sure about Instagram or Facebook or the others, but do you feel maybe that the next generation who are following you through are possibly more active and in a better position to take maybe a leadership role as a current athlete that you weren't able to do during your time?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think there is far more scope to grow your brand. Like, particularly when I was a junior athlete, and athletes more senior, when Dave was in the peak of his career, they'll tell you about it, that there wasn't the same attention, there wasn't the media buy-in, and people didn't have the ability to grow their brand. But now everything's online, everything's on social media. You put up a post, people like it, people share it, people view it, videos it, and you'd be almost scared in some senses how quick things get around. But that's a massive opportunity for swimmers and any athlete to grow their brand. And I think, particularly in Olympic and Paralympic sports, we are far behind probably maybe our GAA co-athletes, or like soccer, rugby, and all that. They've embraced this a few years before us, and I think there is an opportunity to grow it, and that can only do good things for sport. Now, it can invite a bit of negative criticism, and I know there has been, and that's consistent. Like, that's even before social media. There's good and bad and the ugly, but there is definitely opportunity for athletes to grow it, for people involved in the NGBs to grow it. So,
do you feel that you've mentioned the media there? Do you feel that the media's opinion on Paralympians has changed during your time competing for Ireland, and where is it now? Do you feel are we if you were to rank the media's attention of Paralympic sports out of 10, what number would you give it? No pressure now.
Yeah, I'd probably give it about a 6. I think it is improving, and there is good stuff going on, but there is good bit to go. And like for the likes, even for example, with the UK with Channel 4, like we're so far away from what Channel 4 do, the last leg and stuff like that. And it's not really like, where I'd hate to see it go is this over focus on Paralympic sports. Look at these people, they're great, they're an inspiration, let's cuddle them and say they're fantastic. That's not the way it's meant to go. They should be treated equally to Olympians. If they fail in the expectation, they should be criticised. If they don't perform on the day, they should be questioned. But if they're victorious, if they're successful, they should be rewarded. And that's not to say that doesn't happen, but I think we do have a way to go in bringing not only Paralympic sport, but kind of the whole issue of disability into the public. There's a bit of kind of an awkwardness around that at the moment, and particularly in Ireland, and particularly in parts of the country where, and not to be stereotypical, but in parts of rural Ireland especially, and I have a huge amount of family down in rural Ireland, the issue isn't as well understood. And not to say that's Dublin and that's not really how it works, but I have found that in some areas there's kind of, and it's not hostility, it's just a misperception. People assume that because you have physical disability, you need more attention, you need a little bit of a help. Now that can be a good thing, like, and I know even sometimes going around town, people run out of their way to push the wheelchair across the road to help me. But I think we need to get the disabilities out in the public and in the media attention. Like, the media will follow the public and the public will follow the media, so they go hand in hand. And as Paralympic sport becomes more into the mainstream, that will naturally improve. But there is an opportunity for people involved in it to improve it even further.
Do you feel that, you mentioned there that you were coaching and you've talked about getting disabilities out there in public. Do you feel that your role even as a coach is helping this, because there are people around the pool who will see you teaching people how to swim? Do you feel that that's actually helping in a certain way to change opinions and change stereotypes that people may have?
Absolutely, 100%. And I think even having people with disabilities involved in coaching, involved in things, and particularly in coaching where you might be, for example, if I was coaching tomorrow, I might have the junior squad, and there'd be kids ranging from maybe 8 to 13. Having them exposed to someone with a disability, it's suddenly not a shock to them, and if it's on a daily basis, it's not an issue, and they go, oh, my coach, they probably wouldn't even mention my coach has a disability, missing an arm, missing a leg, and that's only good. That it's not like, oh, that guy's disabled, that guy's small, that guy's in a wheelchair. And I think one of the funniest stories was even when I was training, and it was in the Rio year, and I was in the shower just coming out of training, and there was a kid directly in front of me, and he was like jaw to the floor, shocked. And then I was like, oh, here we go. And he's going to say something like, and I'm well used to it, and it doesn't really faze me. And he says, oh, dad. And his dad comes in, he's like, well, look, come on, we're in a rush. And he goes, look at that man, he's tiny. And his dad looks at me, looks back and goes, you're bleeding small, now get out of the shower. So, and that's what I like to see, rather than if a kid goes, oh, look at him, and the parents shuffle them off and go, oh my God, that's ridiculous, you can't say that. Probably the better attitude is, yeah, he's small, you're small, what of it, like, you know what I mean? And removing that's not so much a stigma, but removing the shock and the kind of the obscureness around disability is something that is improving but needs to improve further. And it's where we're lagging a little bit, but I suppose that will grow.
Sure, and it's great to hear you say that, and I think I couldn't agree with you more that it normalises things for people to see people like yourself in positions where they have a big influence in a positive way on everybody. I suppose, look, we're talking about your career here as well, and what you've achieved, and you've done some amazing things. I mean, we look back to Rio, to London, to Ireland, to Dublin. Do you feel, looking back in your career, are you happy with how it has gone and how it has ended? And what will you take away from your swimming, your time as a swimmer in the pool, as you go on into the future?
Mm. Yeah, no, and I think that's sometimes a bit of a dangerous question to ask athletes, and especially high performance athletes, because high performance athletes are always super critical of themselves. And when you ask the question is, did you achieve everything you wanted to do? The answer is more often than not no. But did you give your 100%? Yes.
No question.
Like the question, could I have probably been better? Yeah, absolutely. You could have always been better. You could have technically given it 100% in every session. Now, is that practical? Maybe not, and I don't know. And I've made mistakes, but so has everyone else. And all my competitors have made the same mistakes over and over again. But I think even looking back at my career, I'm immensely proud of what I've done. And getting personal best was always my thing. Like I know, and funny when I mentioned the challenges and the rocky roads over and back, some of the lowest moments in my career was when I was winning medals at European and world level, but not performing to 100%. And that was a big challenge in me personally, and that was a dilemma I had that, I'm getting up, I'm winning a bronze medal in World Championships, and I'm swimming 4 seconds better, or slower than my best. And everyone's saying, oh, look, James, this is the peak of your career, you're brilliant, this is a massive achievement. It was a massive achievement, not many people can claim that, but to me it wasn't, deep down, and I knew that I let myself down, and I felt I let the country down. Now, it's a silly thing to say looking back at it now, but that's honestly how I felt. But going to Rio, going to London, where I might have played 6th, 7th, but I hit my personal best, I broke my Irish record, that's far more important. And that should be the lesson to all junior athletes coming up. It's all about personal development, it's not about winning the medals. If you perform consistently, keep breaking your personal best, you will get to the top eventually. Now, not everyone gets to the top, but you'll get to your 100%. And if your 100% is like the equivalent of Michael Phelps, look what you can do.
Happy days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's no question about your, and I'll let you go now in a second, James, but there's no question that you have a huge competitive spirit. My first time dealing with you up close was at the championships in Dublin, and the memory that I'll take away of you competing is touching the wall, looking at the clock and seeing the time you put in, and then punching the water in triumph. How are you going to release that competitive spirit now? Is it going to be as a coach?
Yeah, it might be as a coach, but and I think it's an interesting question. You have to channel it differently. You can't go around as a coach or in work punching desks when you hit your targets. Or
I don't know. It'd be great crack around the office.
It might get turn a few heads, but no, you know to channel it. And I even forgot to answer the question on the skills you can bring forward. Like you could bring confidence forward, and even the basic skills that everyone goes on about that are allegedly fundamentally basic skills like time management, confidence, leadership ability. They're built over a long period of time. And swimming forced me in a lot of ways to develop them quicker than a lot of my friends, family members would have normally. Or if I didn't do swimming, I probably wouldn't have developed all those qualities that I have, or wouldn't have had the confidence to express them. So they're the qualities I can bring in and skills I can bring into later life. The irony of that, and the irony of saying you're retired swimming. Mid-20s. I'm in my mid-20s, having that little mid-20 quarter-life crisis.
But you've got a long way to go. Yeah.
I do, yeah. But no, you can always find a way to build on the skills, to use them in a different way, but the passion will never disappear. I'll always be passionate about swimming. I'll always be passionate about sport. Probably a little bit too passionate at times, even sometimes going out to watch the Dubs, and my brother and friends constantly say, look James, chill it out. But it's that passion that I had as an athlete that's, when you're in the moment and you're in the zone, even watching, it's very hard to remove yourself from it. What
sports are you going to watch now? I mean, I associate you as a swimmer. Hearing you talk about the Dubs, you've obviously got a GAA streak in you. Is this your outlet? Is this what you watch? Are you a soccer fan? What do you watch in your spare time?
Yeah, well, this weekend even is going to be a disaster because we've the Dubs, we've Ireland, England, and you've Super Bowl on Sunday. So
I'll be busy with those.
It's going to be sport manias, but I'll follow any sport to a point. I wouldn't be the hugest soccer fan, but if it's on, I'll watch it. And that's again, I'm a sports person at heart. I love sport. So I'll always find something interesting in it.
When you're watching sport, do you watch it through the prism of being a athlete yourself? Do you find yourself delving into the psychology and the performance?
Yeah.
I suppose it's very difficult for you to answer this, but how does that differ to maybe my experience of watching sport as not an athlete?
I think, and I do it naturally, but I think the irony is that everyone in Ireland does it. Everyone in Ireland is an expert on everything.
Yeah.
And when you meet someone in the pub after a match, everyone has a different opinion on it, and they're all absolutely right, and they'll argue with you to the end of the earth that you're wrong. So having the and sometimes I do look into things too much, and even into kind of people's like their negative attitude in the match, and I'll naturally spot these things when players step off or players don't have the confidence to move forward, or sports people, and I'm probably a bit overly critical, purely from the sense that if I was in those shoes and I did that and I watched myself do it, I'd be super critical of myself. And a lot of people don't understand that, but watching a team sport especially, everyone's an expert. And I'm sure my opinions are completely wrong on a regular basis.
I was just going to ask you, are you an expert on team sport? Do you feel that you know, you're watching the Dubs that the cornerback is letting the team down, or how do you watch it when you're watching a team sport?
I'm not an expert, but I'll still shout and roar about it. So yeah, I do love, and especially GA. I have a big passion for the Dubs, and it's controversial living in Ratoath because Ratoath is in Meath, and
you're behind enemy lines there.
I'm behind enemy lines, and I will admit I have lived in Meath nearly the entirety of my life, but I've always been a Dublin fan. Even when I first moved to Meath, and Meath were winning the All-Irelands in the 90s, they'd come into Ratoath in primary school and junior infants with Sam Maguire, and I still supported the Dubs then. So if I was going to be a turn coach, you could have accused me.
You're not a glory hunter.
No, not at all.
Well, you've brought plenty of glorious moments to Irish sport. You've been one of the greatest swimmers of any type ever to come through Irish swimming pools. You've done us proud, home and away. And on behalf of everybody, I'd like to thank you for everything you've done for Irish sport. Congratulations on a great career.
Thank you. Thanks very much.